Congressman, your H.R. 4, your jobs bill. Tell us some good news. I follow you on Twitter. I was glad to hear about this.
It's a job creator, much like many of the other 40 jobs bills that we have passed, all of which, by the way, are stuck in Harry Reid's office in his desk drawer. Not one of those has come up for a hearing in the Senate. And one of the biggest frustrations we've had, and we haven't really been able to get the word out, is when people talk about the do-nothing Congress, we have hundreds of bills, literally, that we've passed in the House, including these 40 jobs bills, two of which are mine, that are stuck in the Senate and not going anywhere. And so a majority of the bills that have actually been signed by the President are House bills. The Senate is just a death trap for any legislation that has come out of the House. So we think it's important to stress that, to highlight that, and to allow the American people to understand that the death of all these House bills is in Harry Reid's office.
Yes, Congressman, I've noticed that the only economic vibrancy that this administration wants to see is from the hand of the federal government. So I have noticed that, and I'm also noticing that you've been named Guardian of Small Businesses. Congratulations on that. I know in Mid-Ohio with the farmers and the small business, they're struggling against that wall of bureaucratic nightmare. So appreciate your work in that front. You mentioned you wanted to talk about Ukraine?
Well, yeah. Last week a lot of the foreign policy debate and talk focused around the president's beginning of a plan with respect to ISIS, the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. But another important milestone happened, and that was the president of Ukraine came before Congress last week and addressed us. And it was one of the best speeches I have ever heard from a foreign leader. It was Reagan-esque in many ways. Not much coverage, unfortunately, about the speech. But this is a man whose countrymen are fighting for freedom and liberty. And in fact, in the speech, which I thought was just ironic in many ways, he took, for those of your listeners who are history buffs, he took the theme of the Revolutionary War heroes here in America, the theme of live free or die, and applied it to what they are experiencing today in Ukraine against Russia, asking for our help and our support. Yet our president kind of sits on his hands with respect to this reset with Russia. But it was a fabulous speech. If any of your listeners have an interest in history and get a hold of it and read it, and I think it will go down as a classic. Again, very Reagan-esque and all about freedom and liberty.
Yes, to watch Putin trample Ukraine's sovereignty with just impunity. I mean, some of the rebels were shooting planes out of the sky.
Right.
It's a really remarkable thing to watch and to see that the West seems to be completely on its heels, unwilling to do anything about it. It's kind of frightening, actually, Congressman.
It is, and it's a great reminder again. Back when Reagan was president, the fact is if America doesn't lead, the rest of the world doesn't. And another example of that's Ukraine. Another example of that is what's happened in the Middle East. Not that America needs to be the policeman of the world, because we don't. But if we don't lead, if we don't provide that moral leadership of the issue of freedom and liberty that Reagan so eloquently talked about, the rest of the world just kind of sits on its hands, much like this president has done throughout his 6 years.
Absolutely true. And as a veteran of the Iraq War, I spent time walking the sands of the desert. As I see the administration, actually, Congressman, as I see the exact same talking heads who used to, quite frankly, malign us and defame us while we were in theater. I remember the New York Times had 50 some odd headlines straight every day of trashing the troops. Now it's these same people that are talking about Iraq. It's a jagged pill. It's hard for me to swallow. But there's no real clear vision, and that's what concerns me. It's like second verse, same as the first, where whack-a-mole, this situation. He won't even name the enemy, which really has me concerned because it's my brothers and sisters in arms. It's my neighbors. It's my friends that are going to be the tip of the spear in this war, or this kind of war, or whatever you want to call it. And that president won't even name the enemy. It's very disconcerting.
It is. And so two things of note, agree with everything you said, is number one, I thought it was fascinating. Last night on 60 Minutes, I didn't see it, but I read a clip about it this morning. Leon Panetta, former Democrat congressman and the president's defense secretary, was critical of the president not leaving a residual force in Iraq that helped contribute to what now is ISIS. That's not a Democrat. That's not a Republican saying that. That's a Democrat who used to work for the president who is saying that. I think that is pretty big news that hasn't been covered with much substance today, and I think more coverage will go. And the resolution to arm the Syrian moderates and the Syrian separatists that was voted on this last week, that only goes until December 11th. That's another important note that hasn't received much coverage. And the reason why it goes to December 11th is the funding of government only goes to December 11th, and we thought it was important to revisit this issue because the president, to your point, hasn't provided very much leadership. And so he's going to have to step up and provide more leadership with respect to what his plan is, what the strategy is to deal with this threat, not only threat in the Middle East, but threat to the free world.
Congressman, privileged to talk to you. We're up against it here. Continue to fight the good fight, and a real pleasure. Thanks for catching up with us.